Hello, my name is Michael Manhart. I have the pleasure to present you our SuperMUC project on direct numerical simulation of partially filled pipe flow. What is this project about? Partially filled pipe flows appear frequently in wastewater systems. It can be viewed as a generic model for free surface flow in surface waters. It can generate secondary flow. This is an effect that, for example, as we see here, can lead to an accumulation of floating particles at the surface of a free water. And last but not least, semi-filled or partially filled pipe flow is not yet well understood. There is very few data available. Very few publications on this kind of flow are available, and there are several questions that are unknown. We see here a slice in a semi-filled pipe flow, and the color represents the streamwise velocity, the instantaneous streamwise velocity. We see in this animation that there are several processes which are well understood in standard pipe flow, and these are these uplift of low momentum fluid from the wall to the center. However, in a semi-filled pipe flow, the velocity maximum is not at the free surface, so it's not at the point which is has the largest distance to the wall. No, the velocity maximum is submerged. This is called velocity dip phenomenon. And we have a strong deviation or strong oscillation or a strong modulation of the wall shear stress around the perimeter of the pipe. The goals of this project are to generate a reliable, high-resolution dataset, to explore the flow field, and in particular to investigate the generation mechanism of the mean secondary flow. We use the following methods. We perform a direct numerical simulation of the Navier-Stokes equation in this geometry. This is performed on the SuperMUC, and we do a statistical analysis of the respective physical processes which describe the generation mechanism of the secondary flow. In our flow configuration, the flow is driven by a pressure gradient. We apply periodic boundary conditions in streamwise direction, a no-slip condition at the pipe's wall, and a slip condition at the free surface. This means the free surface is not deformable, and this represents a case in which the Froude number was 0. We took special care to have a domain which is long enough to represent or to be able to capture all the streamwise elongated structures that emerge in such flows. We use the code mglet, which solves the incompressible Navier-Stokes equations. It is specially designed for direct and large eddy simulations. It uses finite volumes, Cartesian grids, an immersed boundary method for representing the curved surface in a Cartesian grid. We use zonal grid refinement for adaptation of the grid to the wall. The time integration is done via a projection method for computing the pressure, and we use second order for this project, second order approximations in space, and an explicit third order Runge-Kutta scheme in time. The code is stems back from the first developments of the code started in the 80s of the last century, so it has nearly 40 years now. However, there's a constant development and adjustment of the code. And the code is being developed at the Professorship for Hydromechanics at the TUM. Yeah, the code is under a continuing effort of development and improvement. We especially would like to mention the support of the Bavarian initiative CONVIR and the close collaboration with the CFD lab of the LRZ since 2015. We see here 3 curves that represent the time for cell update and the development from 2015 to 2017. The original version from 2015 started to get inefficient at several thousand cores. However, in 2017, by applying some improvements of the communication, the MPI communication, we are able to use more than 10,000 cores. This even improved. Now, in the past years, we have dealt with SIMD optimization, and nowadays we can use more than 10 to the power of 5 cores in a pretty efficient way. And there are still ongoing efforts. Currently, we are exploring the use of GPUs and also improvement on the pressure solver, the Poisson solver, which consumes most of the CPU time in our method. We use this code to do a series of simulations of partially filled pipe. So the first series was exploring the Reynolds number effect from Reynolds tau being 115. This is marginally turbulent, up to a Reynolds number of 460, which can be viewed as fully turbulent flow. You see how the number of cells used to represent the flow increases, and also the number of cores that we used here. For the highest Reynolds number, we employed the zonal grid refinement near the pipe's wall in order to be able to resolve the smaller and smaller structures which emerge at the wall, and also the wall gradient. And what we see here is not the computational grid cells, but the grids, yeah, so the partitioning of the computational domain. We also did simulations with a quarter filled pipe and 3/4 filled pipe at a relatively low Reynolds number. I now show you some results. Here on the left of the slide we see the streamlines of the mean secondary flow at a Reynolds number of 180. We see that there's the development of on each side of the symmetry plane we have 2 vortices. We have the so-called inner vortex in the intersection between the free surface and the pipe's wall, and the outer vortices which are attaching to the symmetry plane of the pipe. The outer vortex is the larger one of those 2, and the inner vortex is the smaller one of those 2. This depends on the Reynolds number, the ratio of the size ratio, and this comes from a specific scaling of the inner vortex with the wall shear stress. We see here as well on the right hand side a plot of the wall shear stress along the perimeter of the pipe, and we see here that the maximum of the wall shear stress is in the corners, and this can be about 40% larger than the bulk wall shear stress in the center of the pipe. That also means that when comparing this flow to a full pipe flow, that in the corners we have 40% larger wall shear stresses than along the wall of the pipe. And this was unknown before we did these simulations, because there were no other numerical simulations exploring this flow in such a detail, and also experiments were not able to represent these corner vortices so far. So these results show the importance of these inner vortices, which emerge in the corner between the pipe and the free surface. And we see here that the size of these vortices are shrinking with increasing Reynolds numbers. Therefore, these vortices are more and more difficult to be detected, to be found in an experiment. We see here as well, if we look at the locations of the vortex cores, from Reynolds number 115 to 416, the cores are moving into the corner and getting smaller and smaller. However, in the previous slide, we have seen that the impact on the wall shear stress is increasing. So the overshoot in the wall shear stress in the corners is getting larger and larger with increasing Reynolds number. We see further on that the mean kinetic energy in the secondary flow, which is plotted here on the left, and black means there's nearly no kinetic energy in the secondary flow, and white means there's the maximum of the kinetic energy. We see that at this Reynolds number, the secondary flow nearly almost concentrates at the surface of this flow, at the free surface of the pipe. Yeah, this is here in this region at the surface. We have here strong jets, relatively strong jets pointing to the center of the pipe towards the symmetry axis. And the kinetic energy in these secondary vortices, the inner vortices, is relatively small. What we also computed is the production term of the mean kinetic energy. This is the term which feeds the mean secondary flow with kinetic energy from the turbulent motion. And this term mainly acts at the free surface, which can be seen here, plus there's a small region here underneath the inner vortex where flow is uplifted from the wall in the time average. And here in this spot and in the center of the channel, in the symmetry plane, there's actually a flux of kinetic energy from the mean secondary flow towards the turbulent motion. And only in this region here, mean secondary motion is transferred from turbulent motion to secondary flow. Let me conclude my presentation on the project on direct numerical simulation of partially filled pipe flow. So with the help of the SuperMUC, we were able to do a series of simulations of partially filled pipe flow, of turbulent partially filled pipe flow. We were able to validate the flow by a grid study, which I didn't show here. We elucidated the secondary flow and the turbulence structure, and we identified the generation mechanism for secondary flow for this particular geometry. Let me also mention some issues on the code basis that we use. The code mGLED is, during efforts during the past 5 years, this code is now scalable and performing up to 32,000 cores, probably also more if we have some compromises on the efficiency. We also implemented efficient parallel I/O in the meantime, and I would like also to appreciate the cooperation with the CFD lab at the LRC. I would also like to thank people contributing to the code, which are especially Håkon Strandenes, Johannes Kreuzinger, Yoshiyuki Sakai, Mome Alalen, Igor Pasichnik, Lukas Unklert, and Simon Wenczowski. And I don't know, I forgot probably one or the other contributors. Thank you very much for your attention.